All right, today we're zeroing in on one single idea that could genuinely change everything for you. It's the key to taking back control of your life. We're talking about drawing a line, not to push people away, but to finally understand where you begin. Let's dive in.
I mean, does this question hit a little too close to home? That feeling of being pulled in a million different directions at once, where it feels like your time, your energy, even your happiness belongs to literally everyone but you? Well, to really get what this looks like, let's follow someone who is living this reality every single day.
So, let's meet Sherry. Her day is basically a masterclass in what happens when you have no boundaries. And look, it's not some huge dramatic disaster. No, it's something way more common. A series of tiny little compromises that, by the end of the day, add up to a complete loss of herself. Let's watch it play out.
Okay, so the day barely starts and already a promise is broken. Sherry had one simple plan: finish her daughter's costume for the school play. But that's out the window. Why? Because her mom dropped by the night before, and after a heavy dose of guilt tripping, Sherry's creative morning turned into playing hostess. So the day kicks off with a nice big serving of regret.
A little later, her one and only break of the day gets completely hijacked by a phone call. It's her friend Lois, who, surprise, surprise, is in the middle of yet another crisis. Sherry spends her entire lunch break as a free therapist, listening and giving advice. But you know what? This isn't a friendship. It's a one-way street. Lois never once asks how Sherry is doing, and Sherry just pays the price with her own time and energy.
Just as she's trying to head out the door for her son's teacher conference, her boss stops her. He drops a huge stack of papers on her desk, a 5-hour project that's due tomorrow morning. Now, let's be real, it's his bad planning, his missed deadline, but suddenly it's her emergency. And you know why? Because he says with his big smile, "You're just so dependable," which, as Sherry knows all too well, is just a polite way of saying, "I know I can take advantage of you."
And then the final nail in the coffin comes during dinner. The phone rings, it's her church. Turns out the coordinator for this weekend's retreat just bailed, and this was Sherry's one weekend. Her one chance to rest, to recharge, to just be. But that all too familiar feeling of guilt starts bubbling up. And just like that, her weekend of peace is gone. She says yes.
Man, Sherry's day is exhausting just to listen to, right? But here's the big question. What if the real problem isn't all these people making demands? What if it's not her schedule, her boss, or her family? What if the real problem is internal? What if it's about an invisible property line that she's never learned how to draw?
And that brings us to the core idea here. See, this isn't about building giant walls to lock people out. It's much simpler. It's about knowing where your own yard begins and ends. It's about figuring out what's your responsibility and what isn't.
So let's get super clear on this definition. A boundary is not a barrier, it's a clarification. It's you simply saying, hey, this part right here, this is mine. My responsibilities, my feelings, my choices, they belong to me. It's this simple yet totally revolutionary act of just defining your own space. And thinking about it this way is absolutely key. The line isn't there to push people away. It's there so you know where you stand. And once you know that, you get the freedom to decide what to do with your own property. Your time, your energy, your love, it all comes down to ownership.
This really gets to the heart of it all. You are responsible for your own garden, right? For your own happiness, your choices, your effort. But what you are not responsible for is another adult's happiness, or their bad planning, or their constant emotional drama. That's their garden to tend to, not yours.
You know, when we don't draw these lines clearly, our struggles tend to fall into some really predictable patterns. In fact, the source material breaks it down into 4 common profiles. As I go through them, just ask yourself, does one of these sound a little too familiar?
Seriously, as we look at these, think about your own life. Think about your family, your friends, your job. Which one of these patterns keeps showing up? Because just seeing it, just being aware of it, is the absolute first step toward changing it.
Okay, so we've got 4 main types here. On one side, you have the people who can't say no. That's the compliant, which is Sherry, right? The person who feels so guilty they just can't set a boundary. And then there's the non-responsive, who actually says no to things they should be responsible for, like loving others. And on the other side, we have the people who can't hear no. You've got the controller, who just steamrolls right over other people's boundaries. And finally, the avoidant, who puts up walls against getting help, basically saying no to anyone who tries to care for them.
So if you saw a bit of yourself in one of those profiles, you're probably asking, okay, but why is this so hard for me? Well, a lot of the time, it's because we've all been sold some really powerful myths about what it means to be a good person. So let's bust them.
Oh, this is the big one, isn't it? We are taught from day one to be generous, to be selfless, to put others first. So the very act of saying no can feel like we're being a bad person, like we're choosing ourselves over someone else. But is that really what's happening?
This quote just flips that whole myth right on its head. Think about it. If your yes is coming from a place of guilt or fear or obligation, is that really a gift? Is that really love? The whole point here is that a true, genuine yes, that cheerful, free yes, can only exist if you also have the freedom to say no. Without that choice, your generosity isn't generosity at all. It's a compulsion.
And this is the other huge roadblock. We just don't want to cause pain. The idea of someone we care about being disappointed or upset because we said no, that can feel absolutely unbearable. But we have to make a really, really important distinction here.
Your boundary is a shield. It's a defensive move to prevent harm to you. The harm of burnout, of resentment, of losing yourself. And protecting yourself from that harm is your job. Now, will that boundary sometimes cause temporary hurt to someone else? Yeah, maybe. They might be disappointed they didn't get what they wanted. But their hurt feelings are not the same thing as you causing them harm. Let me say that again. Protecting yourself is not an attack on someone else.
So when you finally define your property, when you see your patterns, and when you start busting these myths, you get to this amazing place. You realize boundaries were never about being selfish. They are the very foundation required for real, healthy relationships.
And look, this isn't just some nice idea. It's a practice. It's a path forward. First, you figure out your profile. Then, you start to unlearn all those myths that have been holding you back. After that, you actually have to practice saying no, starting small, building up that muscle. And what's the result? You finally get to reclaim the power of your yes, making sure that when you give it, it's coming from a place of freedom, not fear.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. Healthy boundaries don't ruin relationships, they save them. By taking full responsibility for your own life, you actually give others the freedom to do the same for theirs. You stop resentment before it starts, and you create this clear, respectful space where real, mutual love can finally grow. So the question isn't whether you can afford to set boundaries. The real question is, can you afford not to?